Okay, so what we should have so far at the moment, we should have completed our food table. So we know exactly how much we're paying for food, how many we need to buy based on how many predicted sales we're going to get. We should have also done something similar for attractions. You could have filled this up even more. And we should have also ensured that anything to do with money is highlighted and converted to money. In fact, I'm going to do the whole column. You can hold control and select more than one range in one go. So we recognize that as money. Anything which is a percentage should also be highlighted and should be formatted as a percentage as well. I'm going to remove some of the decimal places because we don't really want them at this stage. And as you can see, what I've done is I've actually based my estimated ticket sales based on this figure against how many people are attending my event. So 10% of the people at my event will use the bouncy castle, so that's coming up to 100. We can obviously grab a total and link that on the summary page as well. Now, the next thing I'm going to very quickly go through is using a drop-down menu. So a drop-down menu would help us create something that would be easier for the user to use. They would use the drop-down menu to select from a range of options. And the reason we would have that is because we only want them to use a certain number of options, and we might use that later on as well. So I'm going to highlight this column. And what this column is for is so that we can decide which bits of advertising we're going to use. So I've highlighted this column. I'm going to head over to data and data validation. Now, the term validation, if you do know or do not know, is whether something can be accepted or not, whether it's valid or not, whether it's acceptable or not. So if I have, if I'm filling in a form and I have the question asking me for my gender, Mr. would not be a valid option. The only valid options would be sort of male and female, and anything which would be a valid gender. We wouldn't use Mr., Mrs., Ms., Miss. We wouldn't use someone's surname because they should not be acceptable in that form. So I'm going to head over to data validation, and the cell ranges I want to use are already is already populated because I selected it beforehand. The criteria, I'm going to think about exactly what criteria am I going to use. Now, in this case, whether we select it or not would be a list of items. So I'm going to enter my items separated by a comma, so my user can either select yes or no. Okay, and we can have a last one just as a dash if we wish. Do I want to show the drop-down list in a cell? Yes, I do. If they enter something invalid, do I show a warning or do I reject their input? I'll just leave it as a warning for now. Do I want a validation help text, which would basically show a piece of information if they were to hover over that, which I'm not going to use either. So I'm going to click on save, and what you can see is they can select from one of these three options. Okay, so you guys can head over and add those drop-down lists anywhere you feel they should be going. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to also think about my costs. Now, if I select, if I do choose to use the local school newsletter to advertise in, my cost should then be £200. Otherwise, if I do not select it, it should then be 0. So I'm going to enter an if statement here, or the if function. So that would start with equals. Remember, all of your formulas and functions start off with an equals. We're going to enter if, and now I'm going to say if D2 is equal to speech marks. Let's enter yes. Then I want it to display B2, comma, if it's not equal to yes, then I want it to show the number 0. I'm going to close that, and as we can see, as it's a yes, it's 200. If I change that to no or anything other than yes, that will be the case. Now I can simply just head over to the corner here and drag this down, as you should have learned previously, and that will fill that in for me. I could then add up the totals as well, and I may want to do the same for the impact on the visitors. Now we may want to use that drop-down list in other places as well. So I'm going to head over to my tickets. I'm going to add another ticket price, drop-down list in the ticket price. So I'm going to use data validation. The cell range, I only want this in cell B1. In this case, I have my range already created for me. So I'm going to use a list from a range, and the range will actually be over here. There we go. And that's entered for me. And now I can choose from a list of these options. Now, when they choose a certain number, what I will need to do is decide on the effect on visitors. So I will be doing a formula later on, which will go into this estimated sales. However, what I will be doing for now is I'm going to add another row. I'm going to do the formula here very quickly, and this will bring up the value from this table based on what is entered here. So I'm going to use something called a VLOOKUP. So equals VLOOKUP. Now the term VLOOKUP actually refers to a vertical lookup. So we'll look for a piece of information vertically, and it will return whatever's in a certain cell to the right of it, which I will establish shortly. So you can also use something called a H lookup as well, which would be a horizontal lookup. So I've got my VLOOKUP, and I want to say the first thing I want to enter is look for whatever is in this cell. Okay, so this is the piece of information that you're going to look for. And once you've found it, where are you going to look for it? I want you to look for it in this table here. Okay, comma. And once you've found it, then what I want you to do is return whatever is in the second column. 2. And the last thing, is this in order? Yes or no. In this case, it is in order, so I can enter the number 1, or I can enter true. Now, one thing you should have remembered is when we're looking at binary, we have ones and zeros. A 1 would mean that something is true. So we can use either a 1 or a 0. Either way, that will work. So at the moment, I've got 200% because there's no value in there, so it's recognizing it as a 0. When I change that to £1, that's bringing up 150% for me. Okay. Now I have got an issue there. I do want to actually convert that into pounds, which I'm pretty sure you guys will be able to do. So let's think about exactly where I would need to put my drop-down list. Where else can I put them? Where else would I put my VLOOKUPs? Where else can I put them? And how can I bring everything else together? We should have some totals which we can refer back to, or we can refer to from here, and then we can calculate our total profit and loss as well. But next week, we're also going to look at other things that can affect my event as well. Okay, so if you guys can get those few bits done for me, try and think about everywhere where you're going to use an if statement. You can use an if statement here, whether you've made a profit or loss. We can, when we do the venue, we can think about exactly how it reflects with our estimated number of visitors, and if we are over capacity or under capacity, and that way we can play around with exactly what we're doing in order to bring people in.